welcome everybody to the Magic Beans podcast. We are back again for episode number 11. I'm your host tonight and my name is Shorty and I am joined again by a whole bunch of beans. Tonight I have with me on the line Chewy. How you going, Chewy?
Good, thanks. How are you?
I'm pretty good. We also have Cracker.
G'day, mate.
G'day. And of course we have Scott the Blaster Boy. Welcome back, Scott. How you going?
Hey, thanks guys. Welcome all.
That's the way. You missed a week last week. I know you're a bit disappointed about that, but you're back this week, so...
So you recorded without me. That's a disgrace.
Yeah, that's going to happen sometimes.
Was that episode more popular or less popular? I'm just interested.
I don't know, yeah. Maybe we should look at the download count and see...
It did spike, I know that much.
No, we're glad to have you back, Scott, and I'm glad that the rest of you beans could join me tonight. So we have a pretty jam-packed episode tonight. We've got a lot of things to go through. We haven't recorded for 2 weeks, which is our standard. But speaking of standard, we will be discussing that tonight too. Here we go. I'm turning into Chewy with these little segues.
I'm proud of you.
That's probably not a good thing. Actually, speaking of that, there's one thing I wanted to bring up that I'm really disappointed about, especially in you, Chewy.
Oh, hang on.
This whole set, this most recent set, Throne of Eldraine, everybody's been banging on about how flavourful this set is. Oh, there's so much flavour in this set, all this sort of stuff.
Yeah, it's because it's got food. That's why it's flavourful, right?
Exactly. You got there, finally. All this time and nobody's made that connection.
I guess
the flavour and the food.
I guess it's quite low-hanging fruit, isn't it?
Yes.
Speaking of fruit, have you guys seen the shape of the bananas on the token?
Yeah,
what is going on with
yeah.
those things? They're insane. They are curly as.
Okay, we are now a food podcast, and
going into
next
all
week
of
we're going to
the
be
depth
discussing
of
carrots.
The depth of the important issues here on the Magic Beans podcast.
Right, let's get it back on track. So we thought
you're right,
we'd...
it is very curly.
Yeah, okay. Let's not discuss curly bananas.
Distracted.
All right, so we've had a couple of things that we've been getting up to in the last couple of weeks. So we actually managed as a group, other than Scott, unfortunately Scott couldn't make it, we managed to actually get together last weekend and draft some Modern Horizons. We've been trying to tee up for a very long time to get together and have a draft, and of course our walking card store Chris always has on hand some unopened boxes of almost whatever sets we feel like drafting. So he managed to tee it up. We all headed over to Chewy's place and had a bit of fun. Actually got 8 people together and had a draft. So, Cracker, how did you find that night? I don't think any of us had actually drafted Horizons before. So what did you think of that?
Yeah, man, it was great. It was really nice to finally be able to get all 8 people sitting around a table and cracking real packs. Hadn't had the opportunity to draft Modern Horizons. I heard a lot, from all the different places online about how great a set it was to draft and how much fun. And
the last Mythic Championship was Horizons draft.
It was, and it was really sweet.
I don't know if any of us really actually watched the draft, but you sort of heard all through the weekend on the coverage they were talking about, like they did a lot of pack one, pick ones with a lot of the pros, so you sort of heard a fair bit about the archetypes and things.
Yeah, so I quickly pulled up the CFB Primer page beforehand to show a couple of the other guys who were... No. So Cheese is like, what are we playing? He doesn't even know what any of the sets are. It's one of our mates who's
plays Magic about twice a year.
Yeah. We're into Commander now. We've got him back.
Yeah, hook, line and sinker there, I reckon.
But, so it was really good. Well, I drafted a red-black aggro deck. First picked Smiting Helix, which is the, Mardu Lightning Helix thing. And then Shorty decided to pass me a Skelemental, because why not? And so I was all in on just red-black aggro. And did all right. I ended up going 2-1, lost to Shorty in the finals. Yep. He with his red-white sliver beats.
Yes. As always, whenever we draft a set that I don't really know, I almost always end up drafting either red or white aggro, and it does me pretty well. So
it's actually a good lesson for people that are new to drafting. Like, if you're not sure, be proactive, be aggressive.
Yeah, that's right.
I hard disagree, man. The time you passed me
try and do broken things, that's Joel's.
Yeah, correct. He passed me Emrakul in Cube Draft, and I just...
Yeah, but Cube Draft, every pack is full of crazy bombs. It's so hard to take a peek.
But Porcelain Legionnaire isn't a bomb, man.
Hey, I take that. That almost always ends up in my deck.
But yeah, it was really sweet. Finally got to, get some good games in and, just hang out with the boys for an evening is always a good time.
Yeah, it's good fun. We had a few guys that don't play very often. We don't get they don't really come to tournaments, that sort of stuff, but they play a bit of Commander and sort of a few of the more casual formats, and every now and then we managed to get a few of them out and get a draft, so that was good fun. And the week before that, we had the pre-release. So on our last podcast, we had a bit of a discussion about the pre-release and where we're going to play and all that sort of thing. So yeah, we managed to all get there except for Krakow. He unfortunately missed out. Had some family commitments.
That'll do it.
Gotta love those family commitments. But we sort of went down there and had a bit of fun. I didn't open a very good pool. I don't think most of us opened very good pools other than Chris. Chris pretty much had the nuts. Yeah. He had the Feasting Troll King and a Garrick and just a bunch of other good stuff. So yeah, his was quite good, and I think he went 3-0 in his...
Yeah, he didn't drop a game. It's like 2-0, 2-0, 2-0.
Yeah, that's right.
Oh.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, well done, Chris.
Must be nice.
He was obviously a bit too worn out from his crazy victories and couldn't make it tonight, so maybe next time. But Scott, you were there, so we might as well transition into your Blaster Watch. How did you find a pre-release? I don't think you've played one for a while, for a few sets, and the last tournament you played was the MCQ, which I know you were very overwhelmed just with how competitive and the modern format. So how did you find getting back into a pre-release?
I enjoyed it. I thought it was really fun. It was a lot more laid back than obviously what I've been to previously. And the time slot was a lot more user-friendly as well, I think we started at 3 o'clock in the afternoon.
Yeah, 3 o'clock on a Friday afternoon.
On a Friday afternoon. That's pretty good. So, but all up, I enjoyed it. Like you said before, though, I didn't draw any good cards out of the ones I had. So, I managed to put together a red and white just because I knew the colours and they seemed to work all right. Yeah, they were, when I say on paper, pardon the pun, they actually looked all right until I actually got to play the deck, and then they weren't any good at all. But I got to meet some nice people. Got the second bloke I played against, his deck destroyed me within 3 or 4 turns twice. So, and I don't think there's anything I could have done. He just happened to have some really great cards. So I don't think it wouldn't have mattered what I had. But he was a nice guy, though. The bloke that was sitting next to me, though, playing his game, he was a real bit of a tool.
Yeah, right.
Yeah. Talking about Chewy, by the way. He's sitting next to me.
Okay.
but all
Cut me deep, man. Cut me deep.
Well, there was a guy there with a sword, so...
Oh, that's right, the guy with the sword, yeah.
No, we're supposed to be encouraging people to play Magic, not scaring them off.
Wait, didn't you play Chewy the last competition you guys played?
In the
MCQ?
Mythic quality MCQ, I did. Yeah, I played
I didn't play against Scott at the pre-release. I was just
sitting next to him.
Gotcha.
Yeah. At the pre-release, we're just sitting next to each other. But no, it was a good afternoon. I really enjoyed it.
But you found that sort of level of play probably a bit more suiting where you're at currently in terms of skill level and experience and that sort of thing?
Oh, definitely. Yeah. Yep. I mean, I want to do some Friday night Magic now with standard. I don't want to sort of go into modern too much. And so if anything, that's encouraged me to do that a bit more.
Yeah, good.
I'm sort of using the decks I'm creating on Arena. I'll probably turn them into paper decks and play with those and see how we go.
So you would recommend a pre-release for new players to get into. Cool.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I think the atmosphere is great, and this particular set is very flavourful, as we've discussed. So,
tasty.
So, yeah, I'd definitely be encouraging anyone that's new to the game to try one of these casual events.
It's funny when you talk about the flavour. So, I've got a 5-year-old. My eldest is 5, and I came back from the pre-release, and instead of a bedtime story when we were doing our nightly routine, we opened a pack and we read the cards and the flavor text and stuff. And the following week, we were in at the card store at our local here in Ringwood, and she's now got a mono blue fairies deck. She's 5. Nice. She can't read the cards specifically, but she understands, like if it's got 2 and the water drop, that's how many lands she needs to tap. And she's just into it because she can recognize the fairy tales that the cards are representing. So, like, well done, cool. Wizards marketing team.
Yeah, and they've kind of stepped it up another notch at the moment. They're running a promo as a charity thing where they've just printed some My Little Pony Magic cards. So
I told my kids about that this morning, and they were ridiculously excited. I was like, there's no way we're getting any of those cards, kids. I'm really sorry.
I looked at it and went, what a terrible idea. I wonder how much they are. Should I get them?
Yeah.
How much are they?
I think it's like $50 US for the set of 3, and you buy them through the Magic store or the Wizards Plus store or something, I think it's called. And then there's playmats. There's 3 playmats that you can get, and I think the set of 3 is like $90 US, but it's like $50 for the cards, but they're donating 30 of that to whatever the charity is. I think Extra Life, I think, is the charity that it's for.
Yeah.
And then the playmats, it's like $70 out of the 90 or something is going to the charity. So it's a good cause. So if anyone's interested in that sort of stuff, and if you're into My Little Pony, which personally I'm not,
I was going to buy them for my nephew, Billy.
Yeah. Yeah, he would love those, actually.
He'd love them.
I don't know if they're still available or if they've sold out, but I did hear on a podcast I was listening today, people were talking about it. So, yeah, I don't even know if they're actually for sale yet. But, yeah, have a look at the Wizards site and see, because, yeah, Wizards of the Coast, who makes Magic, is owned by Hasbro, and Hasbro owns My Little Pony. So they did last year, maybe the year before, they did a Transformers set that was released at, what was it called? The con
San Diego Comic Con.
They did. It was
HasCon. Oh, that's right.
Yeah. And they did
which I don't think was very successful.
They did the Ravnica Dungeons and Dragons campaign as well.
Yeah. So there's a lot of crossover, because the companies own a lot of intellectual property for various other games. So yeah, it's cool to see them actually branching out and using those things, because if you've got a whole bunch of people that are into My Little Pony, all of a sudden they hear about, there's these sweet cards, have a look at these. What's this? It's a game called Magic. Well, yeah, there's another audience that you can try and suck into the cardboard crack addiction. So one thing I just wanted to touch on, Scott, talking about your pre-release, is not specifically me, but some of the others who were there noticed a few things that you were missing while you were playing, and not to have a go at you or anything like that, but it kind of highlighted to us that for you, the bulk of your play currently is Arena, and going and playing in paper is very different. And this is a topic that's on our list to talk about, but is that something that you noticed personally at the pre-release, that all of a sudden you had to remember to do some really basic things?
I felt that way more so at the Mythic qualifier, where I really had to stay very focused on what cards had what buffs on them. This time round, though, it was just dumb newbie mistakes. It was, and I couldn't, Chewy sort of pointed out at one point, he was watching as I was playing a game, and one of the cards, and I can't remember what the name of the card is, but
it's the Red Knight. I can't remember the name of it.
Where if you want, you can just tap it and he just does 1 point of damage. The opponent I was playing against was on 3 life, but probably at about 4 or 5 turns, and I could have killed him at any time. You know, just using that
one damage a turn.
And I just didn't, because I didn't know the card very well, and I didn't take the time to learn the card. It was just a typical newbie mistake. And I think Chewy also pointed out that at one point I actually forgot to pick up a card when it was my turn, and I forgot to draw from my deck, from my library. So and whether that was just nerves, I don't know, but I can't, there's no excuse for that, because they were terrible newbie mistakes.
But it just sort of goes to highlight, when you're playing a tournament in person, it is very different to sitting at home in your desk chair or whatever and playing on Arena where there's no real stakes. And then when you actually go and play in person, it is very different. And like a thing that people always say is read the card.
Whole card.
Read the whole card and read the whole card. Read the card, read the whole card.
I think the moral of that story was read the card. Because I didn't do that at all.
And it's just little things of just taking that extra 10 seconds per turn to just look at all your cards and just go, okay, is there anything I'm missing before I pass the turn, or when my opponent passes his turn back to me, is there anything I should be doing before I draw my cards and all that sort of stuff. So I think we'll get into that sort of transition from Arena to paper I think that'll most likely be a full topic for an episode. We won't do that now, but yeah, just sort of wanted to highlight that, seeing as that was something that had come up for you recently in the tournament. So,
but also one thing that I did I knew it anyway going into it, but one thing that was emphasised was that don't be scared to ask to look at other players' cards. I mean, we've talked about that before, but particularly in these sorts of events where it's very casual. Most of the players there, the ones that I played against, had no idea what most of their cards did either, let alone what my cards did. And we were constantly reading each other's cards. Yeah. And no one had any grievance at all with that going on.
Yeah, so, especially at a pre-release where you're playing with brand new cards. Like, there's always going to be those people that read every card on the spoiler and know exactly what all the cards are, but 90% of people don't.
Ain't nobody got time for that.
Yeah, and I mean, I know some of the cards because I pay attention to some of it, but there's people that literally go in blind and they haven't seen a single card, so they have to read every single card. So, yeah, at a pre-release especially, go for it. Like, you feel free to read everybody's cards. But in a normal tournament, you are in most tournament settings, you generally want to ask the person, can I read that card, or can I look in your graveyard, or whatever it is that you're doing, because some people are a little bit precious about their cards, and people have cards that are worth a lot of money, so you want to be careful with that sort of stuff, but they shouldn't have an issue. And if they do, you can call a judge and say, I need to know what that card does, and the judge will provide you with the information. So, yeah, it's definitely something to remember. So you also sort of mentioned pre-cast, and this sort of take us into our next topic, Scott, that you're sort of starting to look at getting into Standard. You're jumping onto Arena and playing a few decks on there. What have you been given a go in this new format?
Well, I had to reevaluate my Cavalcade deck because some of the cards in it obviously dropped out. Yeah, half of them came out. So I only 2 cards were actually taken out of my deck, and so I used that opportunity to really rework it. So I'm now working on Cavalcade Part 2. So half the cards are still the same, but I've now put Heartfire in there. Obviously, my Chandra is still in there. Skewer the Critics is a new card that I've put in. I've got 4 Torbrands, and I'm really... he's a great little card.
Yeah,
Torbrand.
He's very good.
Yeah, so I've got him in there. But so apart from the Cavalcade deck, I've also just been using the time just to tinker with a few of the more flavoursome decks. They're not competitive at all. Usually when I play them, they do terribly. But they're just fun. There was one guy I played against the other night, and his was very flavourful, but it was actually a good deck. I wish I could know what deck it was. It was a 3-colour deck.
It wasn't the food deck, was it?
Yeah, it was. It was the food
flavourful.
Deck. Yeah, with the twisty bananas. But he was putting out food. He was bringing out the golden goose. It was all happening on turn 1. He brought out the Once Upon a Time, and I thought, okay, I'm in for a good time. I'm probably going to lose this game, but it's going to be fun losing against this guy. and the amount of stuff that was just going on was good. So I've created my second Cavalcade, and I've also created a 7 Dwarf deck, which
keeping it competitive.
and that's actually not doing too bad. Now, it could also be because I'm in Bronze at the moment, and it's doing all right.
Yep.
But I don't expect it's going to be very competitive as we head into Silver. But for now, it's fun to play, especially when you get those Dwarves out, all of them. But yeah, so I haven't really found a deck yet that I'm really sort of solid on. I know Chewy posted one, which we'll talk about a little bit later. It's a mono red, and I am thinking about creating that deck and giving that a go because I think that's probably more competitive than what I've actually got at the moment in my choices. So
yeah, so what we're sort of hoping for most of the rest of the cast is to have a bit of a chat about the Standard metagame that we're seeing already. There's quite a lot of tournaments coming up for people. They've released the schedule for the new season of PTQs, the Players Tour qualifiers, which we may touch on in another cast. I don't think we've got any in Australia for a little while. But there's the Mogul Championship that's kicked off on Arena that I've been playing on, and I know a couple of the other guys are sort of starting to get into, but there's actual tournaments happening, so we thought we'd have a bit of a chat about the Standard metagame, what's going on. So, as you mentioned, Scott, there is a mono red deck that is doing quite well at the moment. I know you've got the deck list up at the moment.
Mm-hmm.
How much do you think it would take for you to transition into that deck, and is that what you're sort of working towards playing? Or you wanting, because I know that's not a Cavalcade version. It's a bit more of a standard aggressive version, kind of like the previous mono red experimental frenzy, that sort of deck. Are you wanting to move into something like that?
Oh yeah, this is a deck I'd definitely give a go. I love Bone Crusher Giant. It's in the deck. And it's got a few of my favourite cards in there, like the Scorch Splitter and my Shock. I think every red deck has a Shock anyway. Light Up the Stage is also in there, which I like. And Skewer the Critics is another card which I've grown to like too. So it's got all those. I mean, it hasn't got Cavalcade, and I love the effect that Cavalcade has when it comes out on the table, but it doesn't have that in it. But it's got so many other things in here that I do like. So I'd definitely be giving this a go. And I even the land card, Castle Embereth, I do like that as well. So, and that's in most of my new decks now, actually, that card.
It's also got 2 Chandras, Scott.
I know, but they're sideboarded on this. What's going on there? That's ridiculous.
I guess Torbrand
mine wouldn't be sidebound. Right? Actually, no. But see, I like Torbrand too, so I don't know what I'd take.
Can't play too many 4-drops in your red deck.
Yeah,
Chandra's only 3.
Yeah, Chandra's 3.
Oh, it's 3 Chandra.
The 3-mana Chandra doesn't really fit in this deck as well, because it works really well with Cavalcade, because you're creating 1/1s.
Mm-hmm.
So then that's triggering all your Cavalcades. But when you're not playing Cavalcade, it's not quite as good. Like Chewy said, like the 4-mana Chandra, you've got 2 Torbrands and you've got 2 Frenzies. That's a fair few 4-drops for your 20 land deck. It's it starts to be a bit too much.
Yeah,
but the deck still looks good. Like I've played a ton of mono red in the previous season, and this deck looks good. I don't know if it's good enough, as we'll get into some of the other decks tonight. But it's good and it's aggressive, and it's also cheap. So I know we've got some of the breakdowns on some of the decks for us. The reality is we basically play on Arena, and the mono red deck has 0 mythics and 19 rare wildcards, which is the main wildcards that people struggle to get on Arena. So it's pretty cheap. And if you've played mono red in the previous season, like I know for you, Scott, you'd already have most of this deck. So
I do, yeah.
It wouldn't take you much. It might be 5 or 6 or something like that wildcards to get into this deck, and you've then got a competitive, aggressive mono red deck that can actually sort of grind your way up the ladder. So yeah, if you're looking for a budget option that's actually good, and mono red's kind of been that for quite a while, then this is definitely a good deck to look at. So Chewy, I know you've been playing a bit of standard. What decks have you been giving a go?
Well, from the deck with the least number of mythics in mono red to the deck with the most, I've been playing the Czech Cavalry deck, which is there's a member of the MPL, Martin User, who's from Czechoslovakia, and it's a deck that plays the Fires of Invention with the Cavalier of Flame and Cavalier of Gales. They ride horses. Czech Cavalry, that's the name.
Otherwise known as Jeskai Fires. That's another common name for it. I didn't realise it was called
way
Czech
more boring though.
Yeah, well, there's a Planeswalker version, so Jeskai Super Friends, which uses Fires of Invention, but it's just so much fun to because you can literally just 20 people with this deck.
What is this deck doing? So like Fires of Invention was a card that not many people flagged as being really good in the spoilers or in the preview season, and we definitely didn't talk about it. So do you want to read that one out?
Yeah, I'll read it out. Yep, it's an enchantment. It's 3 and a red, and it says you can cast spells only during your turn, and you may cast no more than 2 spells each turn. You may cast spells with converted mana cost less than or equal to the number of lands you control without paying their mana cost. So
good old Wizards printing
free
spells again.
Exactly. So
because that's never broken. We've never spoken about that.
So the deck plays a bunch of lands, like 29. So it's trying to get
just a number.
Yep, a number. And it's got a few cards that are there to kind of just keep you alive whilst you're getting to your Fires of Invention. So you've got some Bone Crusher Giant, which are good removal spells, as well as a good roadblock. And then you eventually cast your and Deafening Clarions to sweep up all those little mono red creatures, and then you stick your fires, play your 5th land, and then you can play 2 Cavaliers in a turn without tapping any mana for it. So Cavalier of Flame has an ability where you can pay 1 and a red and everything gets +1/+0 and haste. So you can do enormous amounts of damage with in one turn basically. So it's almost like a combo kill, and I'm having a lot of fun with that. So sometimes you don't draw your fires, and you blow some stuff up, and then you start playing 5/5s, and you can win that way. But then you get
like the hard casting the Cavaliers isn't that bad. They're still pretty good.
Only 5 mana for a 5/5 flyer or a 6/5 on the ground. It's great, and they've got comes into play
that
and
also
dies
brainstorms.
Yeah, exactly. So it's the deck's really powerful, really fun. Takes great advantage of Castle Vantress as well, because you're often not tapping your lands at all. You can scry, at the end of your opponent's turn or in your own draw step, and you get a look at some extra cards. The deck's just got a lot of power. It's really, really good. Recommend it.
Seems like quite a good one.
This deck destroyed my dwarves, I think.
Yep, could do.
I'm looking at the list now, and I'm thinking, this looks familiar.
Yep. So it's got 8 mythic rares, 24 non-land rares, and 23 rare lands though. So you want to make sure you've got your supply of wild cards nice and healthy.
Yeah, I haven't spent wildcards for ages, and I was like, I've got heaps of wildcards. I had like 25 mythics and about 25 rares just kind of saved up, and I could not afford this deck.
Yeah.
it's ridiculous. 47 rare wildcards you need. That's a lot.
And it's worth it. So
a fair few of them are from the previous standard. Like you've got a lot of your lands, like your shock lands from the guilds, from the Ravnica sets. You've got your temples from M20. So if you've been playing, you've probably got some of those. Like Deafening Clarions and things like that. They're all also from the old sets and Teferis. So you've probably got a fair bit of it, but there's still a lot.
You could trim down a little bit. You could not play Fabled Passage, and that would save 4. And there's Drawn from Dreams, which is amazing, especially when you're not actually paying mana for it. It's 4 mana. Yep. Look at the top 7, but you could play a cheaper card draw spell in that space. A cheaper being a lower rarity. You could have that sort of budget version, but like the deck's great.
You can't play it without the 8 Cavaliers, which are all mythics. So
exactly,
that's a lot of wild cards going there. So if you're interested in playing this deck, you have to be pretty interested, because if you're willing to burn 8 mythics, then you want to be playing this deck for a little while. So just keep that in mind.
So you mentioned earlier, Shorty, that you've been playing in the Mogul event. What have you been playing in that?
Yeah, so I had my first challenge on the ladder for the Mogul event Tuesday night, I think it was. Tonight is Thursday night, so a couple of nights ago, and I actually have another one teed up for after we finish recording.
Nice.
And I played in the events that they had on Arena over this weekend and last weekend, where you could play any deck, so you had access to any card, just to kind of give me a bit of a go of what I might want to play. Tried a few different decks, had a bit of fun. At the end of the day, just went, everybody is saying Bant Golos, or the Bant Lands or Bant Ramp deck, is just the best deck, and you've got to have a really good reason to not be playing that deck. And I looked at the list and found I only needed to spend 10 rare wildcards to get into it, because I'd played the Golos Scapeshift deck previously, and thought, I'm just going to go with the best deck. I'm playing a tournament or an event that I want to do well in, so I'm just going to go with the best deck. And that deck is ridiculous.
Oh, it's awesome.
What's it called again?
I hate it.
So it's Bant Lands. If you're looking on MTG Goldfish, Bant Lands is the name of it. But basically, you ramp, you get a ton of lands. You play 28 or 29 lands, a whole bunch of one-of lands. So you get a whole bunch of different lands with different names, because the main thing you're trying to do, get Field of the Dead into play, which is a land from M20 where, when Field of the Dead or another land enters the battlefield under your control, if you control 7 or more lands with different names, create a 2/2 black zombie creature token. So once you hit 7 lands, and one of them being Field of the Dead, every land you play after that, you're generating a 2/2 zombie. So once you have multiple Field of the Deads, every land you play, you're getting multiple free 2/2 zombies.
And then you do things like Circuitous Route and put 2 lands into play.
Yeah, so you play your Growth Spirals and your Circuitous Routes and Golos. When you play Golos, he goes and gets the land and puts it on the battlefield. So you're just pumping out lands and you're just getting free zombies and just overwhelming the board. And then you're playing cards like Hydroid Krasis to gain you back a bunch of life and draw a bunch of cards. The Realm Cloak Giant lets you wipe the board and then play a giant as a threat. So the version I'm playing, I've tinkered with it a little bit. I'm actually playing 2 Fae of Wishes, and I've got a few cards in my sideboard that I can go and get. I quite like that. I've trimmed down on a couple of Teferis because I've found them to be not that good, and I'm also playing just a one-of Beanstalk Giant. I've found that to be quite good. Go and get a land, and then it's just you. So often in this deck, you're playing really long games. You have 15, 20 lands in play. So you play a Beanstalk Giant and it's a 20/20, and it works so well with Realm Cloak Giant because you can wipe the board and your Beanstalk Giant is a giant, so he doesn't die, and then you swing in for the win. So yeah, it's a very, very powerful deck. I've definitely enjoyed it, and I will be sticking with that for quite a while. It's like looking at the wildcard requirement. It's 8 mythics and 28 rares for sort of the standard version that's on up on Goldfish. You can build a bit of a budget version. Like most of the lists run a lot of temples, like one of like the temples from M20. So you can change them in for like guild gates or the lands that come into play tapped and you gain 1 life, that sort of thing. So that's a good way to cut down on your lands. You have to have 4 Field of the Dead. That's what the deck's built around. You need 4 Golos, but you can change up a few other things. But if you've been playing Standard recently, you've probably got a fair bit of this deck, so it's a good one to get into, and I thoroughly recommend it if you would want to win.
Well, I might wait if I was you. Because the Wizards, just quickly to interject, because this is actually a really important
and there's a rustling in the
make.
microphone. That was Joel putting on his tinfoil hat.
Yeah, absolutely. Wizards sent out a tweet today, because that's what they do, saying that there was a banned and restricted announcement coming on the 21st of October. Now, they literally had one 3 days ago, and no bans, no restrictions. The Mythic Championship is coming up on the weekend, not this weekend, but the following. So I think it's the
weekend of the 20th.
17th to the 20th. And then literally the day after it finishes, there's a ban and a restricted announcement. So,
which wasn't meant to happen until November the 18th.
Yeah, so they brought it forward by a full month. So there's a couple of things that they're doing there. One is it's about to lead into the standard PTQ season, as Shorty mentioned before. And there's a whole bunch of speculation that this Golos deck is it's the best deck in standard by quite a lot. And people are suggesting that the Mythic Championship may be completely full of Golos and Field of the Dead, and there's really no good way to interact with Field of the Dead is one of the problems.
The games are also really long.
Really, really long.
They're just slow.
And because there's no time management required for Arena, you can play a single game of 3, right? So just one of your 3 games, it can take like 50 minutes or an hour. So, like, particularly if you're playing, like, Golos versus Golos mirrors, right? Or Field of the Dead mirrors, whatever you want to call them. So, that's what some of the speculation is. So, if you're thinking about getting into some of these decks that are going to cost you heaps of wildcards and you don't have many, I would really just wait. Because there's a pretty good chance that there's just, like, it's a week and a half. And if you buy a bunch of Field of the Deads with you, you've got 4 rare wildcards and that's what you use, and they ban it, man. I mean, they'll probably reimburse you, but it's still the ultimate feels bad. So there you go, tinfoil hat theory.
In that week and a half, you could crush bulk games.
That's true. You'll get like 60 rare wildcards. It's fine. Don't worry about it.
There's also the flow-on effect. Like if they were to ban, say, Field of the Dead as an example, cards like Golos and the other cards that go around it basically become worthless. Like they're not going to go into another deck. So
correct.
It's
and
not
they
just,
won't reimburse you for those ones.
No, they like Wizards. The last time they had a ban, I think when they banned the Nexus of Fate, they reimbursed people for the Nexus of Fates, but they didn't reimburse people for the other cards that go around that. So yeah, that it's definitely, if you haven't bought into a deck yet, that's definitely a good PSA. Probably wait till after the 21st and then go for it and sort of see what happens. And
the other reason to wait there is, like, BNR aside, there might be some really sweet decks that come out of this MC that might go, oh my, I wish I'd known about that instead. I really want to play it. So, there's always kind of this interesting period now where you've got all the really spiky people trying to break the format in the weeks leading up to the MC because they want to, like, spike a Star City tournament or something like that. And then there's a period where, like, all us casual people are just like, well, I might just hold off for a minute and see what comes out of the PT because that will, or the MC, that will kind of shape what Standard looks like moving forwards from there.
Yep. So while you're going, Cracker,
yes,
do you want to give us a rundown on what you've been playing or what you've seen?
Sure. So I, like you, played in a couple of those free events, and I actually played the Jeskai Fires list, the Czech Cavalry, and it was sweet. But the deck that I did lose horrendously to was Golos, because you just, like, they're both sort of weird control decks, and just free zombies at instant speed is almost impossible to overcome. But anyway, I've been playing, I put together the mono red list that Scott was talking about before. Because in the previous season, I'd played a whole bunch, like yourself, of the Chain Whirler Frenzy, Experimental Frenzy mono red deck. So it was relatively easy for me to kind of get into that one. I've actually held off on getting the rare lands for the moment. I was a couple wildcards short of getting all 4, and I went, let's just see how it goes. So I'm actually playing, like, just mono mountains at the moment, so we'll see how that pans out for me. I'm pretty low in the arena ranks, so I'll try and, score a few packs and see what I can do. Hopefully get some drafts in. When they come online for gold, I want to start getting into some more limited, so that's kind of my aim there.
Singing my song, man.
Yeah. I
got a whole bunch of gold I need to spend on some drafts. So
well, you see,
just waiting for that.
After our last cast, Shorty, I was all ready to buy these packs, but apparently it's just terrible value, so I've got to just draft instead.
Got to calculate that EV.
Got to learn the lessons. But there's some other sweet decks, I guess. The Golos being kind of the focus of Standard at the moment, there's a couple of other strategies that people are looking at to go basically underneath, because you can't really go over the top of it. So one of the other lists that I've seen that is pretty sweet are some mono black decks. So they're doing very similar kind of things. They're using, like, a whole bunch of zombies, Knight of the Ebon Legion, Gutterbones, Order of Midnight, and they're just trying to go, like, 1 drop, 2 drop, 3 drop, like Spawn of Mayhem from a couple of sets ago. I don't know if people remember that one, but hang on, let me read it real quick. Spawn of Mayhem is a 4-mana card that's 4/4 with flying and trample, but if you have Spectacle, so you've dealt damage to your opponent during that turn, it costs 3. So it's 1 and 2 black. And at the beginning of each of your turns, you take 1 damage and you put a +1/+1 counter on it. So it gets real big real fast, and
damage to each player. It deals damage to your opponent as well,
which is great for turning on Spectacle in that turn. So he can kind of run away with games. It's also got Rankle, which I think we talked about for a little bit, which is one of the new mythics from from Throne of Eldraine. So seems like a pretty sweet deck. Using castles, a lot of these decks are kind of going all in on these new powerful rare lands from this set. So
yeah, the monocolored decks are definitely adopting 3 or 4 of a castle, which why not? Like, there's no downside to playing them, and they're all quite powerful.
I mean, they all come into play untapped all the time, as long as it's not your first land. So pretty easy to do. And then the other one that I've seen a bit of is like a Rakdos Aggro. Shorty, did you say you were playing some of that as well?
Yeah, I played, I think, 3 games of that on one of the free things on the weekends, and I found it not very good. I don't think I won any of the 3 games.
The mana base is terrible.
Yeah, it was the mana base. Like, you're playing an aggressive deck, and you've got, you're fairly evenly split between red and black costs, but all your black mana creatures that you're playing, or most of them, are double black, but you just don't have the dual lands. You've got Blood Crypt, so you can play 4 Blood Crypt, but you've got no other untapped dual lands. You're not going to play Temples or
you can't play Guild Gates.
Yeah, you can't play Guild Gates, anything like that. In an aggressive deck, that just doesn't work. So, like, looking at the mana base on this deck, it's 4 Blood Crypt, 1 Black Castle, and then 8 Mountain, 10 Swamps. Like, it's like a draft deck mana base. It's horrible.
But you're trying to have black on turn 1 and then red-black on turn 2 and black 1 on turn 3. Like, the demands on the mana... I think it's a really powerful deck, but you will lose games to your mana base a lot, I think.
Yeah, and that was what I found in the games that I played. And I found cards like it's playing 4 Robber of the Rich. That card, like, there's a fair bit of hype about that card in the previous season, and it just has not turned out to be very good at all. I never ever got to cast a card off of it. So, and I'm hearing that from other people that it's just, people that have played 25 matches with Robber of the Rich and they've cast 1 spell off of it, and it just hasn't panned out. So
it's
that
a hasty grizzly bear, right? That's all
but
it is.
There are common 2/2 like double red creatures that do exactly the same thing.
Yeah.
So like, why spend your? Is it rare? It's a mythic, isn't it?
Yeah, it's a mythic.
Yeah.
So like, why are you spending your mythic wildcards on a thing that you're just never going to get the full value from?
Yeah.
Save them, boys.
Yeah. So this deck is also quite expensive. Like, it's 11 mythics, 35 rares. Like, that's a lot of rares because pretty much all of your creatures are rares, and it's not worth it. I don't think. Maybe if things change, or maybe when another set comes out, like the next set is Theros, maybe we don't get the rest of the temples. Who knows? You get some sort of other dual land, or maybe in a couple of sets' time we get another red-black untapped dual land. Then, maybe it'll be a good deck by then. But I think at the moment the mana just really kills that deck. So I would be avoiding that deck. So I think the other big deck that's sort of getting around at the moment is the Simic Food deck. So I don't know if any of you guys have played against that deck.
I've played against it a fair amount, and I think Scott, even precast, was saying that he came up against it a little bit, and the deck's pretty good. I haven't put it together yet, but it's it is a deck that can sort of grind, and I think if Joel's tinfoil hat isn't too tight and they actually do ban Field of the Dead, this might just be the best deck to fill that vacuum. It will become the boogeyman of the format.
So it's the best Nissa shell that we've got, right? So
Oko.
Both. They're doing Nissa,
unless you're Riley Knight, and then it's Oko.
Sure,
because you're an
Aussie. They're doing like Gilded Goose into Oko, which is just a stupid card.
Yes,
I don't know why they put all those lines of text. Why doesn't it downtick to turn a creature into an elk? Why is it an uptick?
Yeah, and why isn't it like only your opponent's things or something like that? Like the fact that you can just create food and then just turn it into a 3/3 and then create some more food and then turn that into a 3/3, and it's an interesting deck. Like I played probably like 5 rounds of either the Simic version or the Bant version, and Gilded Goose into Oko. They just can't, unless they've got a Murderous Rider, you just can't kill Oko. It's so hard to kill. Like you play it on turn 2 and you plus it +2 to create a food. It's got 6 loyalty. You just can't kill it. Like, what does your opponent have on the board at that time that can attack it and actually kill it? Nothing.
Scorch Spitter?
It's turn 2. Yeah, but that doesn't kill it.
No, I know. It doesn't do anything.
And so then you just continue ticking up, and it's a crazy card. The thing I did find with it, I sent the guys a couple of screenshots of games that I'd played. I had games where my Oko was on. I had one game where my Oko was on 25 loyalty, and I still managed to lose the game because it just never, his minus ability was just never relevant in the matchup that I was playing. I can't remember what I was playing against, but it was just never relevant. And that seemed to be pretty common. Like he would just be on really high loyalty, and there was just kind of, you were generating value, you were creating food, and if you had other things to do with that food, then that was great, or you were turning all your opponent's big creatures into 3/3s and stuff like that, but you just continued ticking up and ticking up and ticking up until someone played a Teferi and bounced your Oko, and then you played it again and continued ticking it up again. So, yeah, very, very powerful. I found the deck to be very powerful, but it still was not as powerful as Golos. That's, the Golos deck is just better. So, yeah, Cracker, you got another one?
Yeah, there's just, a pair of decks that are starting to kick around. Actually, there's 3 variants, but they're based around innkeepers. So they're all adventure-based decks.
Yes.
Yeah. So there's 2 main ones. So they're all green-based. So there's green-white, which is really aggressive. So they're basically just trying to throw out as many cheap creatures as they can. Innkeeper basically doubles your adventures, right?
Yeah, so it's when he's a 1-mana 1/1 for green. Mm-hmm. When you cast a instant or sorcery with the adventure mechanic, you copy it, create a copy of it. So yeah, right. you're playing just a whole bunch of creatures that all have the adventure mechanic, and you're just doubling up. So you're just doubling up your value every time by having that guy. So no, I've just completely messed that up. That's the wrong one. I was thinking of the Lucky Clover, which is not in this deck. The Innkeeper is the one where you get to draw a card.
Right. Oh, yes, that's right. So some of them are playing Lucky Clover as well. Read the card. I just see we had all these other decks listed out, and I went, oh wait, I've got one more to talk about, and no one was ready for it. But
no. This is just we're just drawing back to the read the card lesson from earlier.
Exactly.
We did this deliberately.
Yes,
to illustrate our point.
See?
I am not a bean.
So the green-white version is basically it's an aggressive deck. And then they're still using Venerated Loxodon, which is the Convoke creature from one of the Ravnica sets. Yeah. So you tap your creatures and they get a +1/+1 counter on them. And so they're kind of going wide and tall with that. Then there's also a green-black version, which is much more grindy. And so they're using like Murderous Rider and some of the witches and things like that to do a bunch of sacrifice and just try and gain a lot of value. And there are some Jund versions kicking around, which is red, black, green. And I think they're using that to splash like the giant. Bone Crusher Giant to use like Stomp and, the Lucky Clover. So you can, cast the adventure side and shock 2 things at once, or, kill 2 things with your Murderous Riders and that sort of stuff. So that's the other deck you might see kind of kicking around in that family of adventure decks.
Yeah, it's pretty cool. And again, the Edgewall Innkeeper was a card that nobody really looked at in the previews because
Sam Black did.
It was yeah. We won't talk about Sam Black. He's a very good out of the box thinker.
I looked at it as a potential limited card, right? I was like, if you drafted Bulk Adventures, then I could see, adding one of these as my 23rd card or something and get some value. But yeah, it's certainly better than most people thought.
Yeah, well, it was so hard to tell without playing with them how good the adventure mechanic would be. And it turns out being able to use 2 parts of your spell every time is really good, which we should have known from Flashback and all that sort of stuff. Like, how good have cards with Flashback been over the years? Where you get, or Aftermath, the one from the Armenket block. Yeah, being able to use your spell for 2 different purposes is great. It's card advantage as you said. So when you've got a 1-mana creature you can play on turn 1, that every time you cast one of those things you also get to draw a card. It just it
keeps the engine running, right? I mean, never run out. It's an engine card. So it itself doesn't win you the game, but it lets you keep drawing into those things that will gain you overwhelming value, basically.
And having a card like Once Upon a Time, which pretty much all of the decks that are playing green, I don't think there's any that are playing green that aren't playing Once Upon a Time, that card has turned out to be really powerful because you have that opening hand and you go, you know what, this hand's pretty good, but it doesn't have an Innkeeper. I'm going to keep it and I'm going to draw my card for turn 1 and then I'm going to cast my Once Upon a Time and, oh, look, there's my Innkeeper. Okay, play a land, play my Innkeeper, away I go.
The amount of times I've had an opponent find their Goose to cast their turn 2 Oko. Oh,
yep,
it's disgusting.
I did that. Yeah, so many times. And yeah, you do the same thing in the Golos deck. It's you cast it on turn 1 and you find your Arboreal Grazer and it's like, okay, sweet. Well, now I'll play my land, my untapped land, play my Grazer, play a Guildgate, and away we go. So it's a very, very powerful card.
Card seems really good, yeah.
Who would have thought free spells are powerful?
At least we called that one.
Yeah, I think everybody called it.
Yeah, I know, but I'll take the win where we can get it.
That one was obvious.
Yeah, so I think that's most of the metagame sort of a breakdown. So I know, Chewy, you had something else you wanted to mention before we moved on?
When we have sort of introduced each deck, we counted out the number of wildcards you needed. And there was a time, I was late to the party on Arena. You guys have been playing it longer than me. And so I didn't have the stockpile of the card collection or the wildcards. And in the last season, the M20 season, I drafted a lot, like multiple drafts per week. And that churned out wildcards for me like nothing else.
And you were just paying gold for those drafts as well.
You weren't actually
paying money.
Yep. No. So I had a pretty good run. Like I figured out the format. I ended up, just nudging, got my nose over the line on Platinum by the end of the season. I only started drafting halfway through the season, so I really enjoyed the format, so I wanted to play it a lot, and I kind of cracked the code a little bit. And I watched the number of wildcards that I got kind of go through the roof, because it was you get prizes as like packs as prizes, so you get more wildcards because your little clock spins around. So it's really good. And then the value that you get out of the pre-release bundle when you get the 50 packs for $50 or whatever it works out to be.
Yep.
That is like the best value that you can get on Arena for packs, and it's I recommend that. So anyone who is wanting to get into Arena, when the next set comes out, make sure you jump on that bundle, because you just can't beat that for value.
Yeah, we definitely mentioned that in the last cards, and I think one thing we did actually miss on that on our episode on Arena was what you just said. So every time you open a pack, there's a little in the screen where you open your packs. There's like little counters in the corner of uncommon and rare wildcards. And once those counters fill up, which you get one check, I guess, on each one of those counters per pack you open. Once they fill up, you get a rare wildcard or you get an uncommon wildcard. And then every so often you get a mythic wildcard. So it's not just the cards that you're opening in the packs, and randomly you also get in packs wildcards of various rarities. As you open more packs, you keep ticking over these things and generating more wildcards. So your packs that you open in a draft for doing the draft, so the 3 packs that you open, they also count towards that counter. And then obviously you get prize packs from doing your draft, so they also count towards that counter. So yeah, very quickly you can just play a bunch of drafts with your gold that you've slowly earned and generate a bunch of wildcards and then have access to the decks that you want to play. So yeah,
and then you can play the Czech cavalry deck with all those wildcards. It's awesome.
Yeah, we will. We did mention it when we sort of went through the Arena stuff. We will spend a full topic, full cast one time on drafting on Arena and in tabletop. We won't do that tonight, but we'll definitely touch on that again. So keep an eye out for that in the future. So. Yeah, I think that gives you a pretty good rundown on Standard. If you are looking for the budget options, then probably stick with your Mono Reds. It is a pretty good deck. The Mono Black is also a pretty good budget option, and both of those decks have quite a few cards from the previous sets. So if you have played, it shouldn't be too hard to get into. If you're looking at the cards that have a ton of mythics and a ton of rares, like the Golos decks and the Simic and Bant food decks and probably the Czech cavalry deck, I might wait a week or so until after the BNR announcement just to be sure. Just to see what comes out of the Mythic Championship before you sort of dedicate those hard-earned wildcards to those decks. So speaking of the Mythic Championship, that is coming up, as we mentioned, on the 18th to the 20th of October, and this is one of the Arena ones. So it's being held in Long Beach, California. I've never been there. Any of you guys ever been to Long Beach, California?
Been to California.
Yeah, been to California. I haven't been to Long Beach.
Yep. I assume it's nice. It sounds like a place that's probably really nice for
they
a
get
whole
to
bunch
stare
of
at
nerds.
video screens for the whole time as well.
Sit in a room and play computer games. So yeah, this is an arena tournament, which we have had previously, and they are definitely good to watch. So keep an eye out for the Twitch coverage for this. So yeah, the weekend of the 18th to the 20th. It is so much better, in my opinion, watching the matches on Arena compared to watching paper, where you just have access to so much more information from both sides of the game in terms of what's in their hands and all that sort of stuff. Often in tabletop, it's quite hard to know what people have in their hands. So this is a really good tournament to watch. If you've never watched coverage before, if you want to learn about some of the decks, watch this tournament because you'll get a lot out of it. If you want to learn about banned goal loss, definitely watch this tournament because you're probably going to see mirror matches every round. But yeah, there's 64 players who play in this. So this is the MPL and a bunch of people that have qualified through Arena and various other things, as well as some people that have been invited by Wizards. And yeah, they play through 2 days of tournaments. They go from 64 down to 24 players on day 2, and then from day 2 to day 3 they go down to 8 players, where they have a double elimination final. So yeah, it's pretty good. The last time their setup was pretty sweet. They got the fireworks and the big screens, and they have a whole bunch of really good casters. Brian Kibler and Day 9, like really well known people that are very good at doing that role, are usually running these sorts of things. So yeah, it's definitely a good event, and I'll be, unless I'm in a hospital with my wife giving birth to this child that's coming soon, I will probably be watching some of this tournament. So
You'll be watching it on the phone anyway, man.
Yeah, I'll have, she'll be squeezing one hand, and in the other hand I'll have my phone, and I won't be videoing the birth. I'll be watching the Twitch coverage. Although my wife's going to listen to this, so maybe I won't do that now.
Busted.
Yeah. Outed myself. So I think that's probably going to do us for the cast tonight, unless I've missed anything that you guys can think of. No?
If anyone's going to PAX this weekend.
PAX.
Yep, I'll be heading down there for at least 2 days, maybe 3. We'll see how I go.
Yep.
So, yeah, if you see some strange bloke walking around in a Borderlands T-shirt, that's probably going to be me.
It doesn't narrow it down very much.
Hi.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, it doesn't.
There won't be many of those. If you see that nerdy guy with the glasses and the Borderlands T-shirt, that'll be Scott.
Yeah, 35,000 of them. But yeah, I'll take some cards along, and I'm hoping hopefully there'll be a bit of a Wizards presence this time around. There wasn't last year. The year before there was a big Magic the Gathering presence, but we'll wait and see. So yeah, so if you see me around, hopefully you'll know who I am.
Yep.
Come up and say hello.
Yeah, yep. And hopefully we'll get a few more listeners out of that. So yeah, I think that'll do us for tonight. We'll wrap up the episode there. So thank you again for joining us. We always appreciate the people who do listen to this cast, and it is good to see that our numbers are steadily growing. So keep it up. Keep spreading the word to your friends and sharing the cast out there, because we're doing it for you fellow Aussies out there. I know most of our listeners are from Australia, but we also appreciate our international listeners. So feel free to share us all around the globe. We will leave it there. If you want to get in touch with us and give us any sort of feedback or any topics that you want us to discuss in upcoming podcasts, then you can hit us up in the usual places. So you can find us over on Twitter at MagicBeansCast. You can send us an email, magicbeanscast@gmail.com, or find us on Facebook or our YouTube channel. Just search for Magic Beans Cast. Chewy, have you put up any videos recently?
No, not for a few days actually. So
yeah, I know your work's been pretty hectic.
Yeah, and it's probably come through on the microphone. The man flu is real. So
yes, we've all experienced that at some point in our lives.
My last opponent
way worse than childbirth.
Yeah, exactly. You remember that cat when you're giving birth, all right?
So if you want to find me on Twitter, you can find me at PSync. Chewy, you are?
At Chewy MTG.
Cracker?
Joel Hill _
And Scott?
At The Real Blaster.
Very good. And yeah, that'll do us for tonight. So thanks again for listening, and we will see you next time.
See you guys.